Hi, welcome to the instructional video for week 12. We have a lot of fun things going on this week. So I wanted to start off by preparing you to save you a little bit of extra time for a few different activities where you can kind of reuse some of the resources for the activities if you lay them out in a certain way. And the first one is salt dough. Let me give you the recipe to make salt dough if you've never made it before. So you're going to make some of this, and if you structure the activities throughout the week in a certain way, you can then reuse it for later activities. So this is just really simple, non-toxic. It's not going to matter if your child gets it in their mouth. Dough that you make with 3 ingredients. It's 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 cup of salt, it's a lot of salt, and 1 cup of water. And kids love to make it because you can let them stir it, you can let them knead it with their hands and get their hands messy. So it's also a fine motor skill just making this dough because it's really good exercise for their hands. But then you get to use it in a couple of activities for this week. And if you need more, you can double the recipe. But what you want to remember is to not color the dough at first. It's tempting to go ahead and put some food coloring in there, but for the social emotional activity, which is what you're going to make it for first this week, you want it to be uncolored. And then you are going to want to have food coloring set aside to use during that activity. So you might want to, read ahead and, to the objectives and the activity ideas for that and see what that's about and plan that for some time earlier in the week so that you have that uncolored dough and you do that activity first, and then you wind up afterwards with the colored dough that you can then reuse later for math activities. So then if you go take a peek at some of the math activities for this week, then you'll see where that then comes in handy later. So you can save the dough. It keeps really well wrapped up in saran wrap in the fridge, and then you can reuse it later. And you can always add a little bit more water to it or a little bit more flour to make it the consistency that you need. And then you can reuse that colored dough later for the math activity. Same thing with apples. Apples are a theme this week. So you want to make sure you have a couple of them on hand, and this time you're going to use them first in a math activity. And then you'll also see that our fun project for the week has to do with apples. And so you can either, you can coordinate that if you want to where, you're doing those on the same day, or you could do, the math activity with the apples the day before and save them for a snack during the project, just as a fun snack to sort of coordinate and go with the theme of the project for Friday. So just peek ahead at some of those things before you organize your week to see how, it makes the best sense for you so that it'll save you a little bit of time and you can reuse some of the resources. So diving into the actual objectives for this week. For the language objective, we have uses plurals and possessives properly. So things like, telling your child, look, there are 3 dogs versus the dog's bed, meaning the bed that belongs to the dog. So again, so much of what your child needs to know for kindergarten is just accomplished through everyday conversation with you. And likely these are things that, your child is using and you've been incorporating this entire time. But as far as activities to try to incorporate this a little bit more, look for opportunities especially to use some of the irregular plurals, the ones that are not just made by adding s to the end of the word. So you might look for opportunities to add words like, child and children, mouse and mice, person and people, or those where the plural is the same as the singular word, like sheep, fish, deer. So just look for opportunities to incorporate some of these and to note to your child the irregularness of some of these, point out to them, when we want to say more than one fish, we say it just like we would say one fish. And then 2 weeks ago, we also looked at the importance of, when we were talking about pronouns, we looked at the importance of using the first person possessive pronouns. So teaching them, my and mine versus using the third person. Instead of saying, that's mommy's book, we would say, that's my book. So don't forget about those pronouns and look for opportunities to incorporate those as well. So moving on, to the cognitive objective for this week. It belongs in the focus category. Parents love this one, like we want our kids to focus, right? And this one is about completing a larger task over several sittings. So this involves a project that's, you're not going to sit down and you're going to do it all at once. It's going to require your child to come back to it later, maybe a second time or even a third time, and refocus their attention on something that they were previously doing and sort of pick up where they left off. So this could be working on a larger Lego creation or a larger puzzle. When we were focusing on the objective of completing something in one sitting, we talked about, assembling a little Lego creation or a little puzzle. But if you want to scale that up to a much larger creation, a much larger puzzle, then that's going to require your child to come back and refocus their attention later on as well. Art projects are great for this. If you make like a paper mache craft or any craft that requires, for instance, some kind of drying time where your child is going to work on it for a little bit and then you're going to have to set it aside to dry and come back and work on it some more later. That's a great activity for this objective. Or also having your child help you with a household task. So that could be cleaning out a closet, planting a garden, or doing yard work, something that's going to require you to come back to it a couple of times. These are great activities for this objective. In literacy, we're identifying the upper and lowercase L and the sound of L, which is O. It's a voiced sound, O, but again, you don't want to add, that schwa to the end. You don't want to say L or anything like that. You just want that consonant sound. And this week, counting to 100. So if your child has reached this objective, that's usually a big deal to them. They've counted all the way to 100, triple digits to the end of their hundreds chart. So if you are at this objective, if you need more time to reach it, then that's fine. But if you have reached this objective, take a little moment to celebrate. Maybe have a cookie. Call grandma to tell her what you've done. It's a big achievement. And we're also adding another math objective of understanding that half means one thing divided equally. So you'll begin to introduce the concept of what half is, and that it's not just dividing something into two pieces, but that those pieces need to be equal in order for it to be half. For fine motor, we have one hand-eye coordination activity, one precision activity, one finger isolation activity, and one wrist extension and stability activity. For social and emotional objectives, we have under the category of social awareness, demonstrating awareness of commonalities and differences among people. So whereas we looked before at things that make your child unique and they were noticing different characteristics about themselves, now they begin to notice commonalities and differences between themselves and others. And under the category of relationship skills, we have uses play with others to explore and practice social roles and relationships. So a great time to role play just different, going to the store and one person being the cashier and one person being the customer. I'm going to a restaurant, going to a doctor's office, and children love pretend play, and this is how they engage in those situations. So it's a wonderful time to play with your child and explore some of those different roles. For our project, our fun project for this week, I mentioned that it's going to be Apple themed. You're going to get, now that your child is counting to 100 or very close to 100 probably, you're going to give them a way to visualize how much 100 is. So they obviously have their hundreds chart, but this project for this week is going to be one that helps them to really see how many 100 actually is. So it's a pretty fun project. And again, you can save your apples to have, a fun snack while you do this project together. And that's it for this week. I hope you have fun, and we'll see you next time.